everybody, and welcome to the Demystifying Medical Assisting Accreditation Standards Update session. If you're just joining us, please use the group chat area to type in a response and let us know where you're joining from today. My name is Harper Christopher, and I'm the Executive Marketing Manager for Health Professions at McGraw-Hill Education. I will be your moderator today. In a minute, I'll introduce our speaker. But just some housekeeping. During the presentation portion of our session, please use the Q&A box on your screen to ask any questions of the speaker. At the end of the session, we'll leave about 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A, where we'll answer your questions. You'll also notice that you can click around on the screen to control the size of the various boxes, so you can decide how large you'd like the video or the slides to be. Again, please use the Q&A area to answer your questions throughout the session. Now, please join me in welcoming today's speaker, AmyEnsign. Amy began her career as a certified and registered medical assistant for Michigan's Henry Ford Health System in 1995, eventually becoming a site leader and an externship supervisor. In 2005, while still working as a medical assistant, she began working as an adjunct faculty member for the medical assisting program at Baker College of Clinton Township, which led to a full-time position as program director for the medical assisting programs in 2008. Since 2010, she has worked with McGraw-Hill in the capacity of a subject matter expert for medical assisting texts and digital solutions. Now, I'm going to turn it over to you, Amy.
Great, thank you, Harper, and welcome everybody. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. I seem to be getting a little feedback, although I've muted my mic, so I'm just going to turn down my phone a little bit. Okay, today we're going to be talking about demystifying medical assisting accreditation standards and updates. One of the things that we have to be concerned about when we are in a medical assistant program, if you are accredited, is the all-encompassing and consuming accreditation. And I know that this can be sometimes considered the longest four-letter word that you'll ever hear. However, it really doesn't have to be as bad as everybody thinks. There are a lot of considerations with accreditation so that we can make sure that we are managing guidelines and keeping up to date on all of the things that we need to do to make sure that we're meeting those standards. So today we're going to be talking about some of those things. And the first thing that we'll do is identify what accreditation is. Accreditation is the process of validation that higher learning institutions are evaluated. So what this means to you is that third parties come in and pretty much do an evaluation to make sure that your institution is meeting the standards that they've set forth. They do this in a variety of different ways. The people who set the standards are the peer review boards. So these individuals have worked in the industry as well as in education so that they can ensure that we're setting standards that are realistic and within the scope of practice for the medical assisting field. So some of the things that accreditation does when they come into and assess an organization is they look at the college's overall mission. They want to be sure that the mission meets the standards and that it is involved with community guidelines, has students in mind, as well as providing an overall quality education, not just within the medical assisting program, but within the college in general. Another thing they look at are the objectives and goals. They have specific standards to make sure that the objectives that the college and the institution set forth align with those standards as well. And the goals are very specific. If you were to look in the accreditation guidelines, you would see that many of the goals that they have require specific wording, such as the goal is to provide quality higher education and to deliver a certain product with the end result student. The accreditation assessments also include student requirements for admissions. So one of the things that you need to prove are your admission standards, if you have any rules and regulations, if you have limited enrollment versus non-limited enrollment, and what does the student need to do. And what they want to look for is to make sure that there's consistency across the board for the program and to make sure that they are meeting that consistency. They also want to be sure that we have services available to students. So an accrediting body will come into your organization. They will look at the classroom and your lab and make sure that you have enough resources for the students. And this includes equipment, supplies. This includes having an appropriate amount of area for the students to work. For example, if you have a replicated lab area, they want to be sure that you have enough exam tables to accommodate the number of students that you have working in your program. Then they also look at resources such as advising. What type of advising do you offer for your students? They look at library resources to make sure that you have enough research material available to students. Technology, they want to be sure that you have computers available and that you have given them an opportunity to look at those sorts of things and work with them. In addition to that, do you have a learning support center? Do you offer tutoring services? What's your financial aid about? So really, when accreditation bodies come in, they open up your institution and they look at all aspects, and they want to be sure that your catalog matches your handbooks and that your handbooks match the information that you're delivering to students. So they need consistency across the board. Another thing they look at is the quality of education. If you've ever been involved in an accreditation, you would know that they ask you to provide information about your instructors. Are they qualified? Do they have the proper credentials? Do they have education experience and background? So we can make sure that we're delivering quality education and material to the student. And finally, they take the reputation of the facility into account. They look at community resources such as medical facilities around the area where you're located. They look at the geography. They look at hiring practices. Do the medical practices around your site hire your students? Do you have adequate amount of externship site areas available? All of these things are rolled into one to meet the accreditation, and this is why it can sometimes seem to be so overwhelming. And we do have a question here. It's why is it that accrediting bodies do not take into account any of the Higher Learning Commission accreditation standards for colleges of higher education and treat them like non-government proprietary schools and try to make a government higher ed institution fit into a for-profit model of standard? That's a really good question. I do know that when accreditation comes in, they do look at the Higher Learning Commission accreditation standards, and they want to make sure that the institution is accredited as well as the program. And really, their role, especially when we're talking about medical assisting, their role is to come in just to make sure that the medical assisting program has met all of those accreditation standards. So moving on, we look at what it means to accredit with a Latin root. And when we talk about medical terminology, we get into the Latin and root words and why we have this. So to define that, accredit means to give trust to and to believe. So thinking about the bigger picture, when we are thinking about accreditation, we want to see what their purpose and their mission is. They are giving trust to our institutions to make sure that we can deliver the material necessary to create quality medical assistance. They're believing in us that we're going to meet these standards. And every so often they just need to come in and make sure that we're actually doing that. And we like to do that by looking at benchmarks such as exam pass rates, retention rates. They use their annual report forms. But those are really just given out as in good faith. They also need to come in and check the facilities to make sure that things are safe and quality for the students as well. So for the accrediting bodies for medical assisting, there are two main accrediting bodies. We have CAHEP, which is the Commission on Accreditation of Allied Health Education. This demonstrates over 200 standards in the affective, cognitive, and psychomotor domains. So if you have ever gone onto the KHEP website and looked at their standards, I think at last count there were 239 of them in those various domains. They get very specific and ranging from learning hard skills such as how to take a blood pressure all the way to soft skills such as how to deal with the diversity of patients. So within those domains, anybody who works with that accreditation needs to demonstrate that they have hit the affective and the cognitive. So can the student test well on it? The psychomotor, do they have the competent skills with it? And that is one of the things that makes KHEP accreditation really challenging, is proving to them that you've touched all of those standards and all of those domains. ABHES has fewer standards and can be considered to be a little bit more cut and dry. Their standards include things like prepare a patient's financial record. So it's objective, it's something that can be measurable, and sometimes a little bit easier to approve. Or the ABHES stands for Accrediting Bureau of Health Education Schools. Both of them are widely recognized institutions for accreditation, and both of them are allowed to take the CMA exam. They meet the credentialing requirements to earn the credentials of a CMA. So accreditation standards are continually changing. If you're not aware of it, the AAMA and the accreditation standards through KHEP have changed. They were just approved last year in 2015. The changes included things like adding a nutrition component and adding some other things such as emergency preparedness. So if you really look at the accreditation standards and you think about the changes that they have, it really impacts a program. If you are KHEP accredited and you are working under the 2008 standards, you really have to look at the 2015 standards, map them together, and see if your program has any gaps or if they're lacking anything, as well as to identify what needs to change. For example, some of the items that were in the 2008 standards are still in 2015, but they've written them differently, so they fall under different accreditation standard numbers. So one of the first things that your institution needs to think about if you are KHEP accredited is taking the 2008 standards and comparing them against the 2015 and mapping out where in your program you're going to be meeting each standards. Typically, if you have not yet been accredited and had your site visit yet, you might fall on the cusp where you're going to be measured for the 2008 standards. If you have a site visit coming up within the next year, that's probably where you'll fall. But if your site visit is coming up after that point, then you will likely fall under the 2015 standards. So it's really critical that you start looking at your curriculum now and making sure that you find an area where you can cover every single standard, because that's what they're going to be looking for when they come to do their visit and you do your self-study. Okay, so this is a really great time to do an interactive poll. When do you plan to implement the new KHEP standards? So if you are a KHEP approved institution and you're accredited through them, when do you think you're going to be implementing the new standards? Either 0 to 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 12 months, or 12 plus months, or you're not sure. So go ahead and take a few moments to click the response that applies to you on the screen. And I'll give everybody a few seconds to do that. Okay, we'll just take a few more seconds. Okay, and so we've also gotten some comments in there that Some of you may not be going for the KHEP accreditation, but it is a good idea to look at the standards anyway because they do line up with other accrediting bodies, and it can also give you an idea of things that you should implement into the program to make a more well-rounded student. So it's a great idea to look at them even if you're not KHEP accredited, just to see where the trends are lying. And then we have another comment that we have to implement the KHEP standards now. And I like that comment because it's absolutely true that you need to really start thinking of them. Unless you have a site visit coming up very shortly and you're under the 2008 standards, you really need to think about when you can submit your new curriculum development, when you need to get your instructors on board. And sometimes that can be a really daunting task and it can be very challenging. So we've got a few people that are going to be looking at it in the next 0 to 3 months, or a few more within 3 to 6 months, a couple before the year mark, and somebody past the year mark, and a few people that are not sure. And I completely understand the idea of not being sure because there are a lot of considerations when you talk about remapping your program. You need to think about remapping in a way that you're covering all of the standards, that you're changing your student learning outcomes, that your instructors are on board with the changes, and then you also have to develop work products to match, to demonstrate that you've actually taught those standards. We also have a question about, is ABHES changing competencies? So far, ABHES does not have a plan to, an immediate plan to update their standards, so that's good news for those of you that are ABHES accredited. Okay, so those are the results of our poll. Okay, so with all of this information I've given you, your head might be spinning because I know accreditation is that kind of word. So how can we make it easier? This is what we really, really want to think about. We know that this is something that we need to do. We know that this is a part of quality education, especially for medical assistant programs. And we want to work smarter, not harder. So what kinds of things can we do as educators, as program directors, as institutions to make this process easier on ourselves? One of the things that I do need to mention about the new standards is that they are going digital. So under the 2008 KHEP standards, for example, we were able to provide paper documents. We would have to create folders for the site surveyors to come in. They would look, and we would put all of the standards in the folders, and they would open it up and make sure that the test covered a particular standard, and we did that for all 239 standards. Now we're moving into 2016, and with the 2015 standards, they expect us to create electronic files for this information. So that means that program directors are going to have to start thinking in a different way about how they gather information from their instructors and from their classes and how they store it. So those are some of the things that we're going to talk about, best practices as well. One of the things that we can use to make this process easier is digital solutions such as McGraw-Hill's Connect, which has a variety of different assignment types, and it's designed to allow us to delve into the content through videos, interactive activities, learn smarts, and many types of questions. And this helps the students to have a more meaningful experience and be more engaged in the material. So when you're thinking about keeping this information and you're thinking about how you can store your work digitally, we want to kind of explore some ideas that will help you to do that rather than the standard standing at a copy machine and scanning it in and then putting it into folders, which can be really cumbersome. Okay, so some of the digital solutions such as Connect allow you the opportunity to create your experience for your student by pulling up assignment types, and it's very user-friendly and easy to do. You just create your curriculum, decide the type of information that you want to cover each week, and you can create your assignments. Okay. To make accreditation easier, and in thinking about this as you create assignments, we also have the ability to filter the questions by category. So we can make these assignments with accreditation in mind. Rather than creating an assignment and then thinking about accreditation and trying to put the cart before the horse, we can think about accreditation as we create the assignments. Using the filters, we can align the content with the course learning outcome and the accreditation mapping. So again, we're trying to be proactive in the type of work that we do and get prepared. So ideally, a site surveyor could come in at any time and we would be confident that we are ready. So this slide demonstrates an example of the type of filters that are available. We can filter by ABHES competencies, Bloom's taxonomy. So this would be your remembering, your understanding, your creating, your analyzing. We can filter by KHEP competencies, difficulty level, estimated time, learning outcomes, and topics. And not only does this help us to identify accreditation standards, but it also can help us to work through the rigor and relevance framework to try to create your courses appropriately. For example, in the very beginning of your course, we wouldn't want students to be working on the higher end of Bloom's taxonomy. They're going to be in the phase where they're doing remembering and understanding before they can do creating and analyzing. We would also want to adjust the difficulty level. And throughout the course of a particular class, we would expect it to get a little bit more difficult. Okay. So for accreditation, we can use those filters to pick apart which standards that we want to cover. Once that's been done, then we have an electronic framework of where we can find those standards. This is really helpful when we're preparing the accreditation self-study, as these standards can be demonstrated as having been met in a particular course. And just to pause for a moment, with the idea of accreditation, when they come in, they ask for a huge amount of cross-mapping. They ask program directors to demonstrate which course a particular standard can be found in, which type of assignment it can be found in, and so on and so forth. So preparing for this can be done in an easier way by setting up these standards ahead of time. Okay, and might be a little bit small to see, but I've blown up the ABHES and KHEP standards just to show that you could click on any of those to determine which standards you wanted to cover in that class. For example, under ABHES, 1A is defined scope of practice for the medical assistant. So if you have prepared your self-study or you're preparing it and you wanted to demonstrate that particular standard, you could choose that on this assignment. And now you've just done the mapping of two separate areas just by clicking on that filter. And the same applies to the KHEP standards. Once the filters have been set and you click Get Results, then all of the questions that apply to that particular standard will be available for you to choose from. So it's very user-friendly. In addition to being able to use those filters to set standards in assignments, we can also use reports to make it easier to prepare for accreditation visits. And I use reports all of the time because they have the ability to create them quickly, and the computer is doing all of the work. I don't need to worry about making my own spreadsheets and doing things like that because the system and Connect does it all for me. So within Connect, we have a variety of reports types that are available that assist in demonstrating that the standards have been met. They provide the student data and the analytics, as well as a category analysis that can show which accreditation standards have been met, along with how they were met for each course. So again, we're mapping this over and over and over again so we can demonstrate consistency within the program and consistency within the classes. And having the ability to create the reports quickly and easily saves time. and it allows for the electronic reporting for a more organized and space-efficient accreditation process. I don't know about the rest of you, but under the 2008 standards, I had an entire office room that was just blown up with all kinds of files and papers and reports that I needed to keep on paper because that's how the standards were being measured. And now I've developed a system that I can do all of this electronically, and I keep it on my school's drive. Of course, I've got backups of it anywhere that I go, but it makes it a lot easier because I can create a report, save it, and slip it into the folder that I've made it for. Okay, so this demonstrates an example of the reports screen. Again, if you wanted to get a report just for assignment results, you could click on any of these type of reports and they create it in real time. You can create the reports 40 times a day if you wanted to. There is no lag. It reports exactly what is in the computer at the time. Okay, and they actually provide all of the necessary components to demonstrate the standards. So we can show the student work and evidence that the standards have been met in each class throughout the program. So again, here we go with this mapping. It seems to be a continual theme because this is what accrediting bodies are really looking for. Okay. Okay, so I have a question here asking which texts have Connect capability to choose KHEP competencies and run reports. There are a number of medical assisting texts that have that available. The Booth text for medical assisting and administrative medical assisting. I know that Gowitz has a administering medication text. Booth and Whaley have a math for health occupations for dosage calculations text. And if you wanted a more comprehensive list, that would be something that McGraw-Hill could help you with. But there are a ton of texts out there that do have the ability to choose and run KHEP competencies and reports. So that's a very good question. Okay, so again, here's an example of the different report types with their descriptions. So we can do the assignment results. You can get individual student reports, which is another area that we need to map. So in addition to the classes and the program and the standards, we also have to map how the students did on each particular standard. So if we say that the student has met the standard of defining the scope of practice in a law and ethics class, then we would need to demonstrate that the student was in that class as well as how they performed for that particular competency. So it might be found on the final exam, and then we would have a grade for that particular final exam. Okay. So then we also have the item analysis, the assignment statistics, a category analysis, and then an at-risk report, which helps with students to determine if they are at risk of failing the course or how well they're engaging in the material. Okay. So the assignment results, they can be printed by one or multiple assignments. Okay. They can be printed or exported to Excel to save as grade books to meet the accreditation requirements. And this is one of the features that I really love the most, because all of these reports can be exported to Excel. So you can pull it up on Connect, and it's really pretty and it's colorful, and you can print those reports. But you can also click a little button and it exports it right into an Excel spreadsheet that opens up on your desktop. From there, you can save it. And one of the things that I do for accreditation is I make these grade books for the students on their overall progress in the course, because we are required to keep grade books. And I also keep the individual students' information. So I will create a folder for students, and as they complete each course, I'll pull up an assignment results, and then I save it to an Excel spreadsheet and just move it into that student's information. So when you're creating your student roster, if you think about it creatively, you can make folders for each class, you can make folders for each cohort, you can put student folders into the cohort folders, and you can keep track of that information continually rather than having a self-study and having that freak out mode for 6 months while you're trying to make that self-study happen. It's much better to be proactive and work ahead so that you're constantly prepared than it is to try to scramble and find information on the back end. So ideally, you'll be able to get to that point where you could do that. Some of the things that accrediting bodies look for is they want to see student performance that demonstrates the standards. They want to see individual reports that they can keep for electronic files. The student performance report saves space because you don't have to retain those physical records for a year. And it's easy, timely, and space conscious. So these are all of the types of things that you're thinking about as an institution. And many of us are pulled in several different directions in terms of time. We are limited in the amount of space that our institution can let us store our information in. So taking the time on the front end to set up a good way to store this information is an excellent idea, especially as the new standards roll out. This is what the export to an Excel spreadsheet looks like, and you click the little green button and it sends it right to a spreadsheet for you. And once it's in the spreadsheet, it can also be customized. If you wanted to delete some columns or rows, you could also do that. And there is a print feature as well so that it will come up in the Connect screen. So the assignment statistics, these demonstrate averages for each assignment. We can put multiple assignments on one report, and then these can also be exported to Excel and merged for multiple sections or campuses. So if you are from an institution that has, let's say, 4 campuses out there, but you're under one accreditation umbrella, another consideration is that you need to collect data not only from all of your instructors, but all of your campuses. So having the ability to pull these Excel spreadsheets, you can have one master person involved for merging them together and then saving the information that way. And by doing that, you're really cutting down on the amount of time and footwork that you have to put into gathering that data. This report also helps the program directors determine how well the students are testing by topic area and assignment type. Because at the end of the day, we're all educators, and accreditation is very important, but we still want to be sure that the students are getting what they need. So these assignment statistics can help us with that. It will let us know that 30% of the students got a particular question right, which means that 70% of them got it wrong. So that gives us an opportunity for self-reflection. What am I doing as an instructor, and what can I do differently to deliver that material to the students and help them get it a little bit better? Okay, so this is an example of the assignment statistics as well. Okay. Then we also have the analysis by question. It breaks down each question type. It can be expanded to show progress. And these can also be exported to Excel spreadsheets and merged with other sections or campuses. So if you're delivering the same content across all of your campuses, then it really makes reporting out even easier. So this is an example of how it can be expanded. It will show the student progress for the percentage that they got right on each question. And notice that it also gives the question details. So when accreditation comes in, they can look at these questions and say, yes, that does satisfy a particular standard, and you've met it by going there. Okay, the item analysis across all sections. So when a course is shared with multiple users, such as in more than one section on a campus, the data can be pooled at one time, which saves time, effort, and space. And I'm not sure how many of you actually are in a program director position, but what we have to do as program directors is we may have several sections that are taught by different people, and we really look for a lot of consistency. We value the real-world experience that our instructors bring in, but in terms of delivering the material, we still need consistency so that we have objective deliverables for accrediting bodies. So our instructors come in and they provide their own flavor to the class, and that's more valuable than you know. but we still need something that's very objective, that shows that we've demonstrated a standard and that this information was given to the students. So we then have to collect that information and provide it in our self-study reports. Okay, so this is an example of the item analysis, and notice that if we have multiple campuses, we can pull data from the multiple campuses so that we can create one report. It makes, sections. It makes working with multiple sections and multiple campuses a lot easier and gives us the opportunity to be a lot more organized with that material. Okay, so when we have evidence that accrediting standards have been met, we're required to keep it on file. And this includes demonstrating where the classes have each standards, what the standards are, and the actual work showing how the standards were met. So, for example, the student must demonstrate the ability to complete a blood pressure. So we would need to show where that class or which class has that particular skill set and how the student met that skill set. Okay. This is one of the filters that we can use as well for that category analysis. And so we have yet another way to show the accrediting bodies that we're covering that material. And when we use these analyses, each assignment can be crosswalked back to the students to show that they've completed each standard. So we're going full circle with this. Which course is it found in, which assignment is it found in, and how well did the student perform. The reports pool the information, we can store it electronically, and again, it will make your life a whole lot easier. So this is an example of one of the category reports that show the KHEP standards. So in this particular class, I might cover all of these particular standards. And I can demonstrate that I'm describing the information cycle, the agents, the reservoirs, susceptibility, and I can demonstrate that I'm getting all of these. And I have a good question that just popped through. How long does Connect keep the information? I have information in my Connect account from 6 years ago, so it keeps it for a very, very long time until you delete it. And that's another great opportunity for you when you're thinking about accreditation, because I can go back into a class from 5 years ago and I can pull up reports from that class still. So let's say that something happened, or let's say that I'm working on getting organized and going electronic completely. I can go back in and get that data because it doesn't delete it until I do. Okay. Then finally we have the at-risk student report, and I absolutely love the at-risk student report. This provides instructors with the opportunity to monitor their engagement and progress. So when students don't demonstrate that they have engagement through this report, they can be notified and we can start the remediation process. And this shows accrediting bodies that there's another resource available to assist. So when they come in and say, well, how do you deal with students that aren't doing so well? In what way do you connect with them if you see that they're struggling? You can show them this at-risk student report. And again, you could run the report 400 times a day if you wanted to. And it shows it in real time, excuse me, how the students are engaging with that material, how long they're spending on the assignments. Do they seem like they're just going in and clicking through, or do they seem like they're going in and giving it some thought? And when the accrediting bodies hear this, they know that you are invested in the student's success, which is really something that they're looking for as well. And also showing a commitment to the student retention. Okay, and this is an example of what an at-risk student report looks like, and I've used demo students. So 2/3 of my demo students are maybe at risk, so I might send them a message so that I can remediate, and I could say, is there anything that you need assistance with, or I've noticed that you seem to be struggling with a particular concept. Let's talk about this. So it's another communication tool for your students. Okay. So at this time, I'm going to open it up to see if we have any additional questions about accreditation, the new standards, or just general best practices. You guys have asked a lot of great questions throughout the presentation. Is there anything else that you can think of? And we have a great comment that just showed up in the chat box. In the old days, we did it without supporting technology, which is absolutely true. It was very labor intensive to gather all of this accreditation information up. And now McGraw-Hill is providing with an easier way to get the accreditation and reaccreditation, and this is absolutely true as well. I recently went through an accreditation last year for my 2008 standards, and I had to demonstrate a lot of these standards by using paper. However, it was still easier to use. I've been using Connect and these products for over 6 years, so I was able to print my reports and really get my folder stuffed very easily. And I couldn't imagine having done that without having a tool at my fingertips that I would just be able to put in my filters and do printing. This really helped out with the self-study process. I felt confident and secure that all of my information was mapping back to each other, and they wouldn't be able to see any gaps or any inconsistencies, because gaps and inconsistencies raise red flags, and red flags mean that they ask you to start digging through and getting out more information, which might raise even more red flags. The idea with accreditation is to have them come in and see how well organized you are and how beautifully you're covering all of the standards and mapping everything full circle without having to raise those issues. Our school, we have another question here. Our school is considering moving to another state. Do most accrediting agencies operate nationally? Yes, they do. So this is a great thing. Now, when you actually move schools, you might have to apply for another accreditation, site visit just to get approval for that particular location, but KHEP and ABHES are national institutions. Okay, and we have another great question, two great questions. Does Connect work only with the McGraw-Hill books? Yes, Connect is connected to McGraw-Hill textbooks. It's one of the digital solutions, and it actually is a fully functional digital solution that is connected to the Smart Book, so students have ebook capabilities. There are other features that are available, but Connect is the platform where we can store and save all of this information, and it is linked directly to the text work. Let's see here. And I had a couple. Let's see, another question. How much time do you feel like you are saving using this approach to accreditation visits? Great question. Initially, I thought that, we have to work proactively. I spent about 2 days setting up a system of folders and setting up a process. And once I had that process, I delivered information to my faculty and staff saying, this is what I expect of you, what the types of things you need to turn in to me at the end of your classes. I taught them how to pull the reports and put them in Excel spreadsheets and send them to me. Once I worked proactively on the front end, I only have to work quarterly to file my reports where they need to be. So when I'm preparing for my self-study and my site visit, the next one that's going to be coming up, and probably in several years, hopefully. But when I'm preparing for that, I will only have to pull that information from those folders. And I like to think of it as the mentality that if for some reason KHEP decided to drop in today, I would be able to pull up all of that information and show that to them. So hopefully when I get to that point, it will be a very quick self-study process. And pretty much mostly the only things I'll have to worry about are pulling together all of my institution's materials to demonstrate those things, because I already have all of my student information in their folders. I have the curriculum mapped out to the new standards. Now, that was a little bit longer of a process, but the actual preparation for accreditation by using Connect, very quick and easy. Okay. Let's see. Okay, we have another question. I would like more information to pass on to our CEO and COO. Let them know that we are working on accreditation kit outlining how we can help with accreditation using these tools, and would love feedback if they are interested in reviewing the material. Okay, that is a good question. And we would absolutely support any questions and resources that you would need to share this with your CEO and COO, just to show how much more efficient and time-saving, energy-saving, and space-saving these materials could be. So that is a great question for McGraw-Hill to respond to, so that they could get that information out to you. Okay. We will be having a kit available so that we can get that information with the feedback as well. Okay. Okay, we have a question. We have multiple campuses. We discussed the use of analysis to pull reports, and is there anything else available for multiple campuses? I'm so glad that you asked that question, because there is. When you are creating your curriculum and using Connect to create the curriculum, you have the ability to create a master course. So we have set up the curriculum, we've identified which classes we would want each standard to go in, and then you are going to create the assignments for each course. So you can create homework assignments, video assignments, Learn Smart, all number of assignments right there in the Connect platform, which does link to learning management systems like Blackboard, if you do use those, and Moodle and those sorts of things. But once you've created the master, and this is one of the things that I do for my instructors, I create the master and then I copy it out to them. So that way I know that they're delivering exactly what they need to have for the students. So my information that I get back from my instructors is going to be consistent across multiple campuses and across multiple sections. So having the ability to create the information on the front end and the ability to share means that you have more control with the information that you're collecting from them. So it kind of works a little bit on the front and the back ends for things. Okay. Good question. Any other questions? You guys have had some really great questions today, and I'm sure that this will probably prompt some discussions, hopefully at your school, to think about how you can work with accreditation a little bit better and really embrace the process. I know that when I had my site visit come up last year and the self-study, it was actually kind of a scary thing, and there was a lot of anxiety involved, but in retrospect, I think it was the most phenomenal experience because I know my program inside and out now, and I was able to use that for a lot of process improvement, and I feel like it gave me a fresh start to get prepared for the next accreditation, because I know what they're looking for and I know the kinds of things that I need to save as a program director, and I've educated my staff on the kinds of things that they need to do as instructors to get this material to me. So hopefully we'll be able to embrace the idea of accreditation and work with them instead of feeling like they're an agency working against us. By working proactively, by being prepared in advance and getting ready ahead of time, and most importantly, developing an organized system for saving and storing and mapping your work, I feel very confident that you guys will have wonderful accreditation site visits. So before we end, I'd just like to ask if we have any additional questions. I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. Okay. Additionally, we are building an accreditation prep kit to help the instructors prepare for your visit. If you are interested in something like that, please be sure to let us know, because having those tools and collaborating with others on the available resources that are out there can really make the process go a lot easier for you. Okay. Well, I don't see any other questions. I just want to tell you to have a wonderful weekend. I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and thank you very much for joining us today.